Mark the first anniversary of Michael Hastings' death, which is actually tomorrow. Another major work for Michael Hastings is upon us. It's not an investigative report, but a posthumous novel, a satire Hastings wrote of the corporate news media based on his time at Newsweek. The book is called The Last Magazine. Michael Hastings' widow, Elise Jordan, helped bring the book to life after coming across the manuscript following her husband's death. Elise Jordan is a journalist, political commentator. She served as a director for communications in the National Security Council from 2008 to 9 and was a speechwriter for Condoleezza Rice. In fact, you met Michael when you were a speechwriter for Condoleezza Rice?
Yes, and then we knew each other for a couple of years, and then we started dating, actually, when we were both in Afghanistan. I was doing a story on female Marines in Helmand, and he was doing the McChrystal story. So it was right before, it was during the process he was interviewing and embedded with the team.
So you met this young crusading journalist who never thought his piece on McChrystal would actually take him down.
No, I mean, he thought that it might cause waves for a day or two, but he didn't. You know, the message of the piece for him was the story of counterinsurgency in Afghanistan and of General McChrystal's really strict rules of engagement, which courageous restraint, which means the troops weren't allowed the same force protection measures and were very upset about these rules of engagement.
And he went on to write the Bo Bergdahl story, thinking, my God, if the McChrystal story had this response, Bo Bergdahl is going to blow everyone out of the water.
Exactly. And I love how in the piece he predicted that it would become hugely politicized and that bringing Bo Bergdahl home would start to signal the end of the Afghan war. He thought that there would be a firestorm immediately after publication 2 years ago. That firestorm came now, and I think is exactly the message of his book, The Last Magazine, in terms of what the establishment media seizes on as to make a story. The country didn't care, the media didn't care overall that this lone sergeant was in captivity for 5 years, but then suddenly, when there's the opportunity to politicize it and to re-victimize someone who has been tortured for 5 years, everyone's all over it. And that's disgusting and something that would have really angered Michael.
And this is a rocking satire. So Michael Hastings was an intern at Newsweek. And Michael M. Hastings is sort of the star of this book, this, quote, novel. But talk about who we're talking about here, who the characters are. You've got Nishant Patel, the international editor, Sanders Berman, the managing editor, sort of thinly veiled Fareed Zakaria, and as well John Meacham.
Well, they're composites. I would say that Michael was certainly influenced by his time at Newsweek, but he had a vivid imagination, and it's a talented work of fiction. That said, I think what he wanted to show was establishment media and how cheerleading the Iraq War for career advancement, and how quickly that cheerleading turned as soon as the war turned. Instead of looking at what they had chosen to support and trying to find a solution, they wanted to forget as quickly as possible that they had ever been the one beating the drumbeat to war.
So the first anniversary of his death is tomorrow. After he died, there was all sorts of theories. People were analyzing the scene of the wreckage. I remember there was YouTube videos of the crash, people looking at the engine. Before he died, Hastings had sent an email to colleagues saying his reporting was under investigation. You've been very clear, though, to basically reject all these conspiracy theories.
Correct. Unfortunately, it was a tragic accident. I think that sometimes things are so horrible and tragic that we want to have an explanation that seems to make a little more sense, just then, we lost one of the greatest journalists ever in American history, at least in my humble opinion. So
we actually had the person who helped work on that piece with Bo Bergdahl, Matt Farwell, who said, though, on the issue of the FBI investigating that Michael was so concerned about, in fact, that they were investigating, right, Michael, for his piece on Bo Bergdahl, even though, in a very rare move, the FBI said they weren't conducting an investigation after Hastings' death.
Well, and Matt Farwell is a wonderful friend and collaborator, and I'm so happy that he and Michael were able to work together on that story, which wouldn't have happened without Matt, Michael always said. Such a well-researched story. It really is just an example of the Obama administration's crackdown on journalism. Michael and Matt were able to find out more information about what actually happened and Bo's motivations than the U.S. government. And that apparently is scary and threatening and causes us to investigate Michael Hastings and Matt Farwell, which I really don't understand.
Let's go back to Michael. He was on Democracy Now! In 2012. He said the Afghan war, like the invasion of Iraq, was based on a false premise.
If WMDs were the big lie of the Iraq war, the safe haven myth is the big lie of the Afghan war. And what I mean by that, and this was true in Iraq as well, but 99% of the people, maybe even higher, honestly, the people were fighting, whether it was Sunni insurgents in Iraq or Shiite militias in Iraq or in Afghanistan, the Taliban never actually posed a threat to the United States homeland. So the question one has to ask oneself is that if everything we're doing and everyone we're fighting is not actually a threat to the United States, certainly not a direct threat by any means, then why are we expending so many resources, $120 billion a year, you know, with all the lives lost to do it? And again, this is the big lie of counterinsurgency, which I know we've discussed on your show. To justify this tremendous outlay of resources, they have to say, oh, well, no, we're killing terrorists. But everybody knows that that's not true.
Michael Hastings, in 2012, talking about the Iraq and as well as Afghan war, he reported from Iraq as well as Afghanistan. Elise Jordan, this again, the anniversary of his death. You had written a letter to the New York Times objecting to their obituary of your husband, of Michael.
Yes, it was factually inaccurate. It was shameful. I can't believe the New York Times has reported erroneously on my husband's reporting basically every time they decide to write anything about his reporting, but I really didn't think that they would go that low in someone's obituary.
What
it was just
wrong?
Tasteless. They cited the Pentagon report that cleared McChrystal and his aides of any wrongdoing.
Listeners, you put little air quotes around cleared.
Because the Pentagon, Michael did not participate in the investigation. He didn't believe that the role of the reporter was to turn over your notebooks to the government. But of course, the Pentagon is going to clear. It's all, and if you actually read the report, it's pure speculation. Oh, well, we don't remember exactly. We don't. It's so vague, and that's what upset me. You can't. If you print a paragraph about a report, the journalist should actually read the report and then have some context and decide, oh, well, maybe this report doesn't actually clear McChrystal and aides.
So they did this in life and they did this in death.
Yes, I think Michael's reporting was really threatening to the establishment, and I think that's what he really gets out in this book. When he was talking about what he called the lies of counterinsurgency, what he wanted to do with this book was to talk about how the lies are aided along by the news media and the complicity of so many journalists and so many status quo journalists in promoting this.
Michael Hastings' book, The Last Magazine, is out today. Elise Jordan, thanks so much for being with us. I'm Amy Goodman with Aaron Matt.